The man never imagined that in the desolate place known as the graveyard of space, there would be a lavishly decorated chamber. Inside, there was even a breathtakingly beautiful woman. The story takes place in the year 2092. The space junk collection ship Corona, on its return journey, suddenly received an urgent distress signal. Strangely enough, the signal was laced with the melody of the opera Madame Butterfly, and its source was none other than the restricted zone called the Graveyard of Space. Although the crew resisted with all their hearts, under interstellar navigation law, they were obligated to respond to the call for help. After much difficulty, they finally reached their destination. To their shock, they discovered that the junk in the graveyard had fused together, forming a small celestial body. The seasoned crew members Heinz and Miguel quickly piloted a small shuttle, heading straight toward the source of the signal. Fortunately, the airlock of the stranded ship still functioned. When the gravity system kicked back in, the two immediately removed their spacesuits, carefully gripping their weapons. But when the ship's main doors slowly opened, they froze on the spot. Before them stood a golden hall of dazzling luxury, designed in an ornate, almost vintage style. At the center hung an enormous portrait of a woman, and it was almost certain that this was the owner of the ship. Miguel, still entranced by the portrait's beauty, turned his head just in time to see the very same woman appear outside the window. Yet the moment he pushed it open, the woman vanished into the air with a faint rush of wind. Instinctively, he chased after her, only to realize that everything before him was nothing but a holographic projection. At that moment, a service robot slowly rolled out. The two followed its lead into the dining room. On the table, a lavish feast of food and wine was laid out in abundance. Unable to resist, Miguel took a bite, only to find that every single dish had rotted away. They had no choice but to push deeper into the ship. Soon after, guided remotely by the captain, they finally located the room from which the distress signal had been sent. It appeared to be the ladies' boudoir, but like the dining room, everything from sparkling jewelry to finely tailored dresses had decayed with time, disintegrating into dust at the slightest touch. Through the many trophies displayed inside, Heinz finally pieced together the woman's identity. She was none other than Eva, the world-famous opera diva from half a century ago. Meanwhile, Miguel encountered another projection. This time, it showed Eva hosting a glamorous social gathering. Before he could react, every person in the projection suddenly turned their gaze toward him. Eva then placed a rose on the table. What terrified him beyond reason was that when the projection faded, the rose remained. Hearing the commotion, Heinz hurried over. He picked up the rose, not noticing that the flower, still vibrant moments ago, had withered instantly in his hand. Half joking, he teased Miguel for being so shaken. Before turning to continue the search, neither of them realized that in the photographs hanging on the wall, Eva's lover had already transformed into Miguel's likeness. The two decided to split up, but as Heinz descended a staircase, he suddenly saw a girl plummet from the ceiling. He rushed forward, only to find nothing there. Miguel, on the other hand, noticed red liquid seeping from a statue. Thinking nothing of it, he assumed it was just water leaking from above. Elsewhere, the other crew members aboard the Corona finally uncovered Eva's history. Born into a noble family, Eva had been a celebrated prodigy soprano since childhood, even hailed as the diva of the century. After rising to fame, she quickly fell in love with Carol, a wildly popular male singer of the time. But the bliss didn't last long. Eva suddenly lost her voice, forcing her to withdraw from the stage. On the eve of her engagement, she discovered Carol's betrayal. Shortly after, Carol was murdered by one of Eva's obsessive fans. From then on, Eva vanished completely from the public eye. Meanwhile, Heinz and Miguel pressed on into the ship, unaware that the Corona's communications had been cut off by a mysterious magnetic field. Completely oblivious, Miguel stumbled upon a strange ruin. The place reeked of crimson, decaying liquid, and in the middle stood a striking piano, though no one touched it. The instrument resonated with song. Miguel crept closer, step by step, realizing it was playing the very same melody from the distress signal, Madame Butterfly. But the instant he pressed down a single key, everything changed. In the blink of an eye, the ruin transformed into a dazzling garden bursting with flowers. As Miguel grew entranced, Eva appeared suddenly before him. She embraced him, kissed him, and dragged him deeper into the dream woven by desire. Heinz had just learned through a backup radio about Miguel's strange condition. Before he could take action, a blinding light swept him into the illusion as well. In a daze, he suddenly saw Eva on stage, stabbing him with a knife. When Heinz opened his eyes again, he was shocked to find himself back on Earth, at home, with his beloved wife and daughter standing before him. As he drowned in the joy of this impossible reunion, the roses blooming endlessly around him suddenly pulled him back to harsh reality. Realizing that everything was merely Eva's illusion, Heinz rose in fury, broke free from the dream, and immediately raised his weapon, blasting the figure that had taken the shape of his wife into pieces. At that moment, the ship's communication system finally came back online, but with the magnetic field in the graveyard growing stronger, Miguel was now completely out of contact. The captain decisively ordered Heinz to retreat at once. Just then, the ship's service robots went berserk, launching indiscriminate attacks on Heinz. After a grueling fight, he managed to destroy them, and eventually located Miguel, still lost in the illusion. No matter how he shouted, Miguel remained unresponsive, entranced by the dream. In the end, Miguel followed Eva's phantom deeper into the ship, vanishing completely. Heinz watched in anguish, but before he could react, the piano music returned, and in an instant, he too was pulled back into the garden. From Eva's lips, he finally learned the truth. The one who killed Carol all those years ago was not anyone else, it was Eva herself. Afterward, she came to this void in space, constructing an eternal illusion of memory, because only within her memories would her lover remain faithful forever. As her words faded, Eva revealed the power of the illusion. A ruinous building rose before Heinz's eyes, one he knew all too well. It was his home on Earth, and also the place of his deepest sorrow. The tragedy of his daughter's fatal fall played out again right in front of him, but this time, his daughter stood up in Eva's arms. This was Eva's true purpose, to exploit the wounds buried in Heinz's heart, and drag him into complete submission. Just as Heinz was about to give in, the wallet in his pocket slipped out. Inside, a photo of his family snapped him back to reality. His grief-stricken eyes hardened with resolve. Without hesitation, Heinz fired at Eva's illusion, and then, he saw an even crueler truth. The Eva before him was nothing more than a cold, lifeless android. Her real body had long since decayed to bones, and all of this, everything that happens, is the result of the spaceship system program following her initial memories, or one might say, inheriting her last wishes, and it will continue to operate endlessly. Meanwhile, the Corona was on the brink of total power failure. The violent magnetic storm now seemed alive, attempting to swallow everything around it. To prevent the ship from being destroyed, the captain made the painful decision to abandon Heinz, ordering an all-out strike. The plan was to use the shockwave of the explosion to escape the storm's grip. At the moment of detonation, Heinz was caught in the blast, swept away along with the wreckage of countless victims before him. Right then, Eva's voice, pure as heaven's sun, rose again. As everything shattered apart, the system quickly rebuilt it all, and the graveyard of space revealed its true form, a single blood-red rose, forever frozen in bloom. In the final scene, Heinz slowly opened his eyes in the endless void, and inside his oxygen mask, a rose petal froze in place. Perhaps it symbolized Eva's obsession that would never fade. Or perhaps it meant that everything was still just another dream from which he had yet to awaken. The man never imagined that by taking the company's newest cold medicine, he would nearly bring an entire nation to ruin. The man's name was Tanaka, an employee at a pharmaceutical research institute. With the flu spreading everywhere, his nose ran constantly, and his co-workers suggested he try the company's newly developed cold medicine. Taking their advice, Tanaka went to the director's office, where he found the new drug they mentioned. Perhaps it was his trust in the company's products, but Tanaka swallowed the pill without a second thought. Moments later, the receptionist at the front desk seemed to detect some foul odor. Not only her, even the lab mice were frantically sniffing the air. When the director learned that Tanaka had taken the pill, he frantically searched the building for him. Meanwhile, everyone else also seemed to smell that stench. Unaware of the chaos outside, Tanaka quietly rested in the lounge. When he woke the next morning, his body had completely recovered, but the once bustling research institute was now deathly silent. As Tanaka stepped outside, he discovered the receptionist had died mysteriously. He searched room after room, only to find every single one of his colleagues dead. Terrified, Tanaka dialed the police. At last, he entered the director's office, where he found the man slumped over As if he had died reaching for the button in front of him, Tanaka pressed the button himself. And instantly the research center went into full lockdown. A man's figure appeared on the monitor. It was the director of the new Drug Development Bureau. He demanded that Tanaka deliver the new medicine and all related data to him, insisting that no one else must ever know, for this was a state secret project. And the very drug he spoke of was the same cold medicine Tanaka had swallowed the day before. Under sudden orders, Tanaka obeyed without hesitation. In his rush, he failed to notice the abnormalities around him. Crows flying overhead dropped dead from the sky, one even striking him, nearly causing an accident. At the same time, he passed fields littered with animal corpses. More disturbingly, sunflowers and cherry blossoms were blooming side by side. Tanaka spotted an ambulance crashed on the roadside, the wreckage a stark contrast to the bright flowers, and the silence was deafening. By then, the government had deployed massive armed forces to respond. Fleeing civilians clogged the roads in every direction. Journalists, desperate for exclusive coverage, arrived in helicopters over the city. From the air, they spotted Tanaka waving a flag for help. Though authorities had strictly ordered no descent below 300 meters, the reporters, chasing their scoop, landed on a rooftop. The moment they touched down, they collapsed and died. The situation worsened rapidly. The bureau director and his superior nervously entered the command center, reporting the cause of the disaster to their superiors. Just then, a researcher relayed new findings. The epicenter of the catastrophe was moving, and it was heading straight for Tokyo. At that revelation, the officials panicked. Only then did they realize Tanaka himself was the root of the disaster. Outside the city, soldiers finished evacuating civilians. As they prepared to retreat, they spotted Tanaka, mistaking him for the last stranded civilian. But as they approached to help him, every soldier near Tanaka collapsed to the ground. The captain quickly understood Tanaka was the source of the smell. He ordered an immediate retreat, but those too slow to run were killed by the fumes. By now, every TV channel nationwide was reporting Tanaka as the origin of the stench, yet Tanaka himself remained clueless, completely unaware that he was the cause of it all. Intent on reaching Tokyo as fast as possible, he even found a motorcycle to speed his journey. The military resolved to eliminate him, but in the command center, a senior officer objected. He reminded them that their department had invested in this research, and Tanaka must be captured alive. As a sample, the safety of the public, to him, was irrelevant. In the end, the troops were dispatched. Because the intensity of Tanaka's stench shifted with his emotions, his moods, his physical exertion, the army brought in his grandmother, hoping she could calm him down and convince him to return peacefully. But just as Tanaka paused, they prepared to snipe him. The shot failed. Their position had dropped below the 300-meter limit. Within seconds, the soldiers were overwhelmed by the fumes. To destroy Tanaka, the military even launched missiles, but not one missile so much as grazed him. Worse still, a distant tank unit reported total failure. Their engines and controls had been disabled. At that moment, every branch of the armed forces was mobilized. Yet Tanaka's stench was too powerful, disrupting all communication systems. This revelation sent waves of panic. Civilians fled in chaos, but the senior officer remained calm. They had already prepared the latest spacesuits, resistant to outside electromagnetic interference, with armor strong enough to withstand mortar fire. It was clear they had never abandoned the goal of capturing Tanaka. They even deployed massive wind machines, hoping to blow the stench away. At that moment, a helicopter landed, carrying the officer's covert operatives. Facing the fearsome odor, they marched straight into the danger zone. Soon, the command center detected the stench dissipating. Communications gradually came back online. On the monitor, a feed showed 3 operatives, announcing they had successfully captured the target. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. The top brass lined up in the base, ready to welcome the team, but to everyone's shock, a man walked straight through the crowd, heading toward the director of the Pharmaceutical Bureau. He handed the suitcase to the director, and the moment that man revealed his true face, everyone was stunned. It was Tanaka.